I haven't talked about video games much or even at all on this channel. It's part of the things I'd like to cover and discuss. Now, I'm not telling you I'm going to go in depth. I definitely don't play games like I used to. I've brought this up before. I grew up on Sega Genesis. Actually, the first console we had in our home, it was an Atari, and I'm trying to remember what Atari it was. And I think we had ColecoVision as well. And the first system that I owned was actually the Sega Master System. And after that, the Sega Genesis. And after that, the Sega CD. As you can tell, I was a Sega guy. Sega, as far as making consoles, they went out of business. I transitioned into Nintendo. I had a Nintendo 64. I bought that later on, like well later into its life. I bought a GameCube when it came out. I was actually pleased with the GameCube. I liked it. I thought it was a very adequate system for the time it came out. And I think as far as graphics and power, it competed. It wasn't the greatest, but it was definitely in competition. But after that, something happened to Nintendo. Nintendo decided that they just weren't really gonna compete anymore. They didn't have a system for many years, and then when they finally did come out with a system, it was the Wii. Definitely different, innovative, gimmicky to some degree, but it was severely underpowered for the generation that was at hand. I had bought an Xbox 360, and that was the last console I bought up until my Switch Lite. Now, I'd bought consoles for my children, Wii U, Wii, Xbox. What Xbox was that I bought for my sons? It was an Xbox and a PlayStation 3, I believe. And I just didn't really own any consoles. Nostalgia, right? I grew up playing Nintendo and Sega Genesis. Obviously, Genesis was my jam. I loved my Genesis. Sonic and Vector Man. Oh my goodness. That was it. But the Switch, I didn't catch on right away. But when the Switch Lite came out, I thought this is a price point I can come in at and enjoy. And yo, I'm going to be honest with you. There's a lot of games on the Switch that I was really thoroughly impressed at what they did with this console. Now, it was still for the generation and for what it was competing with, in my humble opinion, severely underpowered. And here's the thing I always had in my mind. It's not like you have to be exactly like these other systems. You don't have to have the exact specs that they have. But if you can at least and at a bare minimum compete on a level that you can actually have games on your console that are on these other consoles. Maybe they're not as good, but they're good, can hold their own weight and perform. Unfortunately, the Switch was powerful enough to put out some great games, but not necessarily powerful enough to compete with some of these AAA games that were coming out for Xbox and PlayStation. Now, the Switch 2, there's been a lot of stuff go out about the Switch 2, and I am convinced that people are addicted to being negative. Now, I'm not telling you that the Switch 2 launch is without its flaws, right? There could be some better communication from Nintendo, but the system that you're getting, like, Nintendo's back to competing with this system, in my humble opinion. It's not better than the PS5. I would say it competes. Not better, but it competes. And I looked at, what's the game? There is a, man, I can't remember the name of this game. It is, here it goes right here. What is this game? Oh my goodness, I'm like drawing a complete blank. But anyway, there were images shown of this game. It'll come to me. It's probably in this article. We'll read it. And it compared the game between, what was it? The Switch 2, Steam Deck, PS4, PS4 Pro, and PS5. And I'll be honest with you, Again, it was not better than the PS5, but if I owned a Switch 2 and had that game, I'm looking at these images and I'm like, yo, okay, it's Cyberpunk. I don't know why I couldn't think of that game, Cyberpunk. I was like, okay, you're competing now. Like, no, you're not blowing anybody out the water, but nor is anyone blowing you out the water. Now, I'm not talking about PC gaming. That's a whole different animal right there. I'm just talking about consoles. But when I saw the Switch next to the PS5, I thought to myself, yo, okay, Nintendo is now competing. Now, of course, price is higher. And this is my thought on this. I think for the first time in many years, Nintendo actually put work into competing in the current generation. That costs money. Now, how much money that costs, how much goes into R&D, I can't tell you, but I think Nintendo's actually making a valiant effort, and despite all the PR missteps, I think the Switch 2 can be a return to form for Nintendo actually competing in the console space. I don't want to see Nintendo go away. I'll be honest, I was sad to see Sega go away. If Sega came back and started making consoles, to me, that would be great. It's weird. And again, this is nostalgia speaking, and I understand this, but it's weird to see these consoles battling. Nintendo's still here throwing blows, and Sega's just making games and they're not making consoles. That is weird. Like, I never thought I'd see this day come, but, Sega had some bad business moves, and here we are. So I wanted to read a little bit from this article right here, nintendolife.com. Opinion. The Switch 2 is a powerhouse for the price. And I have to say, I agree. And it's going to show an image here. So it says, there's been a load of discourse about the price tags associated with everything concerning the Nintendo Switch 2, and rightfully so. If we can't discuss things like this openly and frankly, some big company would like to exploit the public more than they already do. Yeah, of course, we need to discuss these things. I agree. The talk regarding the price of games carries on. And it's layered, multifaceted issues that tariffs aside, essentially boils down to the fact that people don't like to have prices raised anywhere. And that's entirely understandable. It's not nice to see a big company suddenly demand more moolah for something than you were expecting. And this is true. I will add this caveat. Now, I looked up the price of Pitfall Harry covered for inflation. It released in the early 80s. And the price back then was $44 compared to today, like today's prices. Yo, that's actually, when you looking at that, it seems like games didn't really go up in price as much as they probably should have with inflation. Now, that's not making excuses for Nintendo. What made them, what went into that decision making of raising the price of the games? I don't know. Is it as big of a deal as people are making it seem? I'm not sure that's the case. I think people might be going a little in too far with a little bit of rage bait. I think some people are going into that. I've noticed it. Okay, I agree with the game side of things. I don't want to pay more than I want to, as much as anyone else, but I can't in good conscience say the same thing about the console. For everything it offers, I honestly believe it's a flippin' powerhouse, and I got to agree. So it shows Cyberpunk between the Steam Deck and it. And if you're now, obviously, we're looking at an image that was taken. Now, these were in 4K, so there's only so much you're going to get. But if the Switch is on the right-hand side and the Steam Deck is on the left-hand side, and I am here to tell you, if you go to nintendolife.com and look at this article, you can tell where the Switch 2 is leaving the Steam Deck in the dust. And here's the thing, you got to take the silver linings when you get them. No one was expecting the Switch 2 to be this powerful. No one. I had a conversation with my son, and I remember telling him, look, if the Switch 2 is underpowered, just like the original Switch was, even they did a lot with the Switch. They did a lot, and I like my Switch Lite, but I was like, if they're underpowered again, like not even competing, like I wasn't expecting like blow PS5 out the water, not like that, but like compete, like come give me something that compete. And I told him, I said, if they don't give me that, then you know what? I don't think I'm investing in this system. I can tell you right now, if the Lord allows, I will pick me up a Switch 2, because looking at this Cyberpunk game, looking at that Mario Kart game, looking at the Donkey Kong game, yo, it's looking fire. Okay, so the article goes on to say, don't get me wrong, $450 is a lot of money, whichever way you slice it. But what we're actually getting for the money is, I think, more than reasonable. I have to say I agree. Being a bargain and costing a lot of money are mutually exclusive. A house in good condition that's half the price of all those around it is undeniably a bargain. But it's still hundreds of thousands, they say, of pounds, but you know, we're in the US, of dollars to buy. And this is true. This is true. We can't say with any solid certainty just how powerful the Switch 2 is. It's going to be, and even it's going to be, and even if we did, it's a difficult thing to quantify in a way that the average gamer is going to be able to understand. Now, I understand a little bit more about graphics technology than the average person. And even still, like, I'll be honest with you, a lot of things now, it comes down to optimization. You may have a device that doesn't have the same specs as other people. I'll give you an example. I have an M1 Mac Mini, and I can tell you right now what I am able to do with this thing should not be possible. But Apple has optimized this device so much so that I can do things. This Mac can do things and punch way above its weight class, like way above. And I think Nintendo might be doing the same thing. That's what it seems like from all the videos that I've seen personally. That's what it looks like. Few people give a teraflop about numbers. They care about how powerful it's going to feel. And whatever wizardry Nintendo is doing, what they're doing with this Switch 2 is incredible from what I have seen thus far. And what we have is a console capable of outputting 4K resolution at 60 frames a second, which is no slouch, like at all, with a 1080p 120 hertz HDR screen that you can flip into a backpack or oversized pocket and play wherever you want. It's the same thickness as the original Switch to boot. And if you can find something else out there that boasts the same power, features, and form factor for the same price, please let us know, because we'll buy in an instant. And that's true. That is true. It says, not convinced? Have a look at the video on top of the page where I go into more detail and use Cyberpunk 2077 as an example. It's strong stuff. Okay, so this video right here, which I believe I've watched. Hold on. trying to get that sneeze out and trying not to sneeze in your ear. Okay, so let's check this. Let's check this video out. I think I'm almost positive I've watched this video. Do I have it muted? Do I have it muted? I'm not hearing this.
Switch to whichever way you slice it, it's a lot.
I got a bunch of things playing at once. So let me pause that. See, this is what happens when you don't pay attention to everything you got going. I'm like, what is that other sound that I hear? Okay, so
I'm talking about the value when it comes to the performance, because we have a vague idea from looking at things like Mario Kart World and things like that. We can look at that and we can go, that looks
all right, let's see.
Looks nice, but on a consumer level, it's definitely harder to really pin down just what kind of power we're dealing with here. Is there a way that we can analyze?
I'm gonna fast forward because I think there was a showed the comparison in this video. Okay, here it goes. With the Cyberpunk, and I'm telling you, that Cyberpunk footage, that's what convinced me. That's when I was like, okay, yeah, I might buy this. I might have to buy this.
You know, sort of, it's amazing that it runs at all, you know, that kind of thing. But it has to be said, some sacrifices have been made. Some sacrifices that they did not have to make with the Switch 2 version. I've got a side-by-side here so you can get a better idea. And if it's not immediately obvious to you, I mean, look closer, I suppose. Admittedly, some people may be watching this on a phone, which is going to make things a lot harder. But let me just freeze frame here, for example. I think this is a really good indicator to show the difference between the two systems.
It is really crazy.
Just look at the dirt. Look at the...
Yeah, so as he's saying, let me close this. If you look at the dirt, you look at this grass right here near his left shoulder, and you look at the car and the details in the car, there's a lot of things that typically I wouldn't pay attention to because honestly, the Steam Deck graphics are good enough. I don't need anything better than that. I'll be honest with you. I'm not a graphics hound like most people. Now, in the early days of video games, when graphics were increasing, we went from 16-bit to 32-bit to 64-bit. Yeah, graphics were getting so good that it's like, yeah, this is better than this. And yeah, we need a little bit more. Now, I'll be honest with you. I'm at the point where, what do they call it? The law of diminishing returns. Like, yeah, better graphics would be dope, but do I really need anything better than this? I'm going to be honest with you. What I'm seeing from the Switch 2 right now, I am not a gamer, so don't come for me in the comments because I know there's a lot of gamers. Oh, no, I got my PC with 30 gazillion teraflops and it can blah, blah, blah. Look, all I'm telling you is I was younger. I was more of a gamer. Now I'm a casual gamer. And what the Switch 2 is putting out, what I see from the Switch 2, I don't need any more than that. I don't need any more than that. Right now, Nintendo is competing on the console level, in my humble opinion, and giving me everything I need. I don't need any more. And I believe they show some more footage. Let's go. Let's see what else they show in the video.
Detail in the background as well. There is so much more here, so much clearer on the Switch 2. And this isn't a capture thing or anything like that. This is just because the Steam Deck is running at a way sub 1080p with upscaling and all that sort of stuff. Admittedly, the original was captured at 1080p 60. Trust me, capturing it at 4K wasn't going to make it look any better. There we go. That was easy, wasn't it? It's more powerful than a Steam Deck. I also have another portable PC, a little thing called the One X Player X1, which I did a video about. And I thought, well, that'll be interesting as well, you know, have a comparison because, you know, the Steam Deck, it's running Linux, you know, it's got that compatibility layer with Proton and stuff like that. Let's see what it's like on a more powerful system. And the One X Player X1 is more powerful. It's the 8840U AMD Ryzen wrong order. It's the AMD Ryzen 8840U model,
good. I've never
and
seen this
it's
system.
reasonably powerful. It is reasonably powerful, particularly for a portable device. I wanted to get the settings as high as I could without frame generation, and I was aiming for about 40 frames a second, which is what the Switch 2 is aiming for as well, at least in docked mode. And I've got to say, the Switch 2 is winning out again. I mean, the Steam
That's
Deck, I couldn't even
crazy.
really get to 40 frames a second consistently
That's
at
crazy.
all.
Like, when
Here,
you-
it seems to be much more consistent, but even then, like, later on in the game, I ran into some serious, like, frame drops. I mean, I
Switch is
say
doing
serious,
its thing.
you know, down to the 30s and sometimes 25 and something like that. And I know that the Switch 2 can handle the game properly because I've seen Xeon play Dogtown, and Dogtown is dog something on Steam Deck at the very least. But the One X player is running on Windows, which is pretty intensive, at least compared to the Switch 2's operating system.
I like the fact that he's
which could
being
probably
fair
run
in
on a
his comparison,
button. So
too.
I turned to our colleagues at Digital Foundry, and they very kindly agreed to let me use some of their footage from their comparison between the PS4 and PS4 Pro versions of Cyberpunk 2077. And this is where things get even more interesting. Just
we
because
go.
of the
Let's
nature
see.
of the footage, we don't have the same shots per se, but suffice it to say, I mean, the Switch 2 is easily looking noticeably more powerful, at least in Cyberpunk 2077, than the PS4. The PS4
That's
is
crazy.
softer, the frame rate is way less consistent, but what about the Pro? Is it more powerful than even a PS4
And the
Pro?
PS4 Pro
The
ain't no
answer is
slouch.
possibly. The problem with comparisons like this is it's never going to be exactly one-to-one, particularly when you don't have the game yet.
And I think
you
this
know,
is a launch
Cyberpunk on
title.
PS4 and Pro, that's an older build we're looking at here. You know, sort of there have been performance
And
improvements.
I wanted to stop and say, I think he brings this up in this video, that this is a launch title, and this is like early in Switch 2. So it's not like developers have had time with the system to learn all of the different, things they can do and how to optimize. And already they're producing games at this level. Yo, I'm telling you, I'm personally excited about the Switch 2. I know a lot of people aren't. There's a lot of, negative press that it's getting all over the place, but I'm personally excited.
And things like that all over the year.
Oh, and let me put this in there. So I had heard a couple months ago that Microsoft was actually going to put the Master Chief Collection on the Switch. I am like, let's go. Can you imagine playing a Master Chief Collection portably? Yo, and that Metroid Prime 4 is looking fire.
But the fact that we're even considering that the Switch 2 might be more powerful than a PS4 Pro? That's pretty damn exciting. And some people will say, well, why would I spend that much money when it's not even as powerful as a PS5 or something like that? And to that I say, do you complain that your laptop isn't as powerful as your massive gaming?
And this is kind of the point I was making. The PS5 clearly is more powerful than the Switch 2, right? As far as we know right now. But when I saw the side-by-side comparisons of Cyberpunk, they had a PS4 Pro, PS5, and a Switch 2. I was like, yeah, the PS5 has more clarity, but it's not like leaps and bounds more. Like, it wasn't so much more that you're like, oh, forget the Switch 2. It's like, no, the Switch 2 it'll do. It'll do.
PC, I hope not. The Switch 2, not pictured, is a portable device. You can hold it in your hand, you can carry it around. It has a screen, a 120 Hz 1080p screen, and a battery. You've got to pay for those things. The PS5 and every other standard console that just plugs into a TV, you don't get those. You need to have.
That's something to think about with the Switch. You're really getting two experiences in one. Look, when they came out, the original Switch, genius move. And for me, I'll tell you how it worked for me. Like I said, I hadn't bought a console in years, but I said to myself, I am going to buy the Switch Lite because I can sit up in my bed, pop in a game, and just play. I don't have to set anything up. I don't have to sit anywhere. And the games were perfectly fine for what it was. Perfectly fine. I have a couple games I play and I love, and I'm like, yo, this'll do. And I would say that the the original Switch, it had great games, but it wasn't competing in the current generation. I don't think you can say that about the Switch 2. I think it's competing.
Have a TV, which admittedly you probably already do. You can also use a monitor. But you can't take your PS5 out of the house and play it on the bus. And I'm well aware the Portal exists, but the Portal is like half the price of a Switch 2, roughly. And then you also need a PS5. And to complicate matters further, Cyberpunk 2077 is a launch game on the Switch 2.
Yeah,
games are always better later down the line as people become more familiar with the architecture. They understand more. They can squeeze more out of every little bit of the console. So this is arguably as bad as a AAA port is ever going to get. And that's another thing. This is a port. The game was never designed with the Switch 2 in mind. How could it? It wasn't even a glint in Miyamoto.
And it really does make me more excited for what possibly comes next. What about the superhero games we get on the Switch 2? Oh man, this might be monumentous.
So's I. Miyamoto probably didn't have too much to do with the Switch 2, but it's a metaphor. The fact that they can take an existing game and just shove it onto this system and it looks this good? That's exciting. If you're not excited, you're not looking closely enough. What's more, Nintendo will always get more out of their system because they flipping made it. They understand it inside and out. They know the little corners where you can find more graphics. Just look at Mario Kart World, an open world racer.
Pretty amazing.
Look at how glorious it is with all the animations, the shadows, all the effects and everything. You can't deny it's a pretty game, and this is a launch game from Nintendo. They only ever get better. Pokemon excluded, but that's not Nintendo developed. There's in fact an excellent example of this on the Switch 1, and even then it wasn't that long after launch, all things considered, only a couple of years. Luigi's Mansion 3. Luigi's Mansion 3 honestly looks like it could be a Switch 2 game already. Yeah, it's not 4K, yeah, it's only running at 30 frames a second, but my god, this is an impressive game for the Switch 1. Imagine what next level games could do with a Luigi's Mansion 4. Nvidia, the creators of presumably the biggest chip in the Switch 2, have made a blog post saying that it's 10 times more powerful than the Switch 1 and all this sort of thing. I don't actually find that useful to quantify, to be brutally honest, because what is 10 times more power in a games console? It's kind of meaningless in a way. I mean, you can get a vague idea, and I understand why they use numbers like that, but I don't actually think it's that useful, realistically. And all of this is on a device that costs pre-tariff.
I want to go, let me see. I don't know if he covers the Metroid Prime 4. I don't think he does. Okay, so I think it'd be good for you if you're not convinced and you're thinking to yourself, yeah, I don't know, I don't think the Switch 2 is really all that. Man, go look up the video for Metroid Prime 4. I'm telling you, I think gaming this season around, and I think this Christmas, I think the Nintendo Switch 2 is going to do well.